I think I just want to start with the fact that global civilization is currently engaging in a very important challenge that is namely climate change. And it's needless to say that despite cross opinions of its origins, the world has experienced a lot of its impact. Yeah. Total climate-related events that, like floods, etc., has been increased significantly. And energy as our field of involvement contribute to the understanding that the cause of it may be from greenhouse gas effect that layering our atmosphere. IRENA has exercising study on this, and they have issued a so-called RE maps in which they said that renewable energy, energy efficiency, and electrification can provide over 90% reductions of global greenhouse gas effect. This is related to the emission that will be expected at 33 gigaton CO2, and to reduce the to 2 degrees Celsius limit, we need to lower it down into 9.8 gigaton in 2050. And there's an expectation that 36% of it will come from deep electrification process, 39% from renewable energy, and 25% from energy efficiency. I'm now talking about my region, Southeast Asia, which may be number 3 in economic bloc in Asia. And in 2015, the senior energy minister meeting has agreed upon the target of 23% renewables penetration by 2025. And there are a lot of things that could be done, has been done, including policy, fiscal incentives, grid access improvement, regulatory instrument, but yet there is a concern that Southeast Asia may miss the 23% of renewable 2025 target. And I think this is not undermining what has been done in Indonesia. There are a lot of projects in Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam. Yeah. But it seems that everything is being done rather not in integrative manner, you know. So IRENA again suggests that there should be workshops on sharing of best practices between countries, and perhaps today this is one of what they think we should do. And also on this event, it's important for us to introduce so-called Global Smart Grid Federations, because Global Smart Grid Federation, where me and Rafi belongs to, has a purpose of facilitating collaboration to conduct and foster R&D in smart grid, support rapid implementation of smart grid, global center of competency, both technology and policy, and an international exchange of ideas, and then a venue for dialogue and cooperation between public and private. Global Smart Grid Federation consists of 7 board members and 3 ambassadors. One from America, ambassador for Americas, which is Rafi, ambassador for Europe and Africa, Mark Boyle, and he's not here yet, and ambassador for Asia Pacific. We have 5 international working groups. 2 already completed their tasks, and 3 in the pipelines. And the aim of this discussion actually is to collect many opinions concerning what we can do to help, what we should do to be able to meet our renewables target in the future. there are 5 questions that have been stated in the brochure. I will not need to repeat them, but please understand that this is the focus of our discussion today, is to get feedback for these 5 questions. I will let Rafi to moderate this event. And please, thank you very much for all participation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Being partners in crime at the Global Federation was only to, it's a federation of federations. So India is a member, France is a member, as is Mexico, as is Indonesia. Former chairman, managing director of the utility there, 61,000 megawatts was under his control. So we have people who have stepped up to the plate only with one objective, to lend their time. It's a voluntary organization. And that is to ensure that the mistakes of the smart grid necessarily have not gone sort of and repeated in other particular parts of the world. It's still being repeated. Sometimes you can't avoid it, but in other parts. So REGI, by the way, India is the chair right now. So REGI, therefore, is the chair of the Global Smart Grid Federation. And as a part of that, several studies have also been conducted. Some task force are still on. And so people come and voluntarily contribute. In places where we do not have a federal agency or an association, we allow utilities and think tanks to be members. So we have, in fact, a couple of think tanks, like Florence School of Regulation is one of our members. And so we have that, and in some cases, utilities, ESCOM is one of the members from South Africa, because they don't have a national association. So with that, what I was hoping here was we would have a kind of a question first, and then maybe with your purview as to what you see in your jurisdiction is the most important, or where you think you can contribute to the rest of the world, particularly, in fact, in places far away from where you live, and how would that be enabled in order to get the lessons of smart grid across? Remember, it is charitable to some large extent. And also, what would be relevant for that country? Because many times we roll out something that's not even relevant to the country, and then it gets thrown away. So with that, I will now pass the mic around. You go first. You may have to leave early, you said. So with that, just introduce yourself.
Yes, so good afternoon. I'm Patrick Clarence, and I'm Secretary General of EASE, the European Association for Energy Storage. And in this context, EASE as an association is pushing for the applications of storage and the solutions storage can bring. We are not specifically pushing one technology. So I know that a lot of discussion is happening now on lithium-ion batteries, but this is only one of the families of energy storage. And if you want to really go to a decarbonized system, then the challenge is not only how to balance in minutes or maybe hours, but how to balance in days and how to balance in seasons, and to make sure that you have the electrification possible, as you mentioned it, also with the seasonal variation of wind, the seasonal variation of sun. You need to balance this out. So the flexibility is not only a second and minutes flexibility, it's also a seasonal flexibility you need to work on. So that's important to acknowledge. That's why you need a full set of technologies which allow to have this decarbonized renewable energy used over the year when it's needed. So that's the first step, which is important to keep in mind. And in order to allow this, at the end, it's all about the money. If you do not have the business case for the one who puts down the device, then it will be very difficult to get storage, to have this service. And now we're back to the services, to the business cases. In order to allow for energy storage to be taken up by the market, there must be an entity which is tendering a service where you can bid into. And this can be frequency containment reserve, or which is fast reserve, primary reserve, other system services. And I learned that in India, for example, they're now discussing that the primary reserve is also available for batteries. It's not the case for the moment, but it's apparently starting. We had a visit at Tata yesterday, where they explained us that they cannot bid yet into the system services, all system services, but they would like to. So it's important to create these services on a national level where you can bid into, to have a revenue stream. And this means that you need to create a service which is monetizable by the person. So if you talk really about seasonal storage, and you talk about getting wind energy from the windy times of autumn and spring to the calm time when it's very hot or very warm, then there's no real business case for this. It's a societal added value that you decarbonize the energy mix. But there's no one company who gain money. So if you do not have this service tendered out, and it could be that the national grid tenders out curtailment avoidance as a service. I want you for 3 days or 5 days to make sure that I know this is a windy season, there will be no curtailment at this node. Please provide a product, and they provide the product and say, I pay you so much per megawatt hour you store for this 4 days, and then you have to release it back into the system afterwards. So if you don't make this, if you don't make the products, then it's not working. We talked before about the added value to not cut down a national forest. Just before we had this exchange. It's an added value for the nation, but it's not one single person which is grabbing and having the benefits of this. Or if you keep more renewable in the system, because you have more flexibility, it's the whole system who gains. So you need to have an entity which can tender out these services. That's very important.
Just 2 questions on that. So where do you see as an association with the technologies that you've seen that there could be an overture for some kind of an association with a country that you think requires more energy storage along the lines of the MOUs that was announced, or any such possibility, or tapping into maybe a federal fund that you know of that can then get a pilot going in parts of the world that does not have that capability?
I mean, for the moment, I'm looking at Europe because we're the European Association, so I don't have a global overview. Sorry for this. But today we heard that there were 2 funds announced, 2 funding announced. One from Sweden, which was 1 million, I believe, and the other one from the European Union together with India, where each side will put 9 million euros down, so 18 million euros there to demonstrate how it's done. And this European India Fund requires to have 3 partners from India and 3 partners from Europe, who will then be able to demonstrate. And there's a kind of technology transfer taking place, because it's technologies and applications we see in Europe, we have in Europe, and we see that India is more and more moving forward in a decarbonization of the energy system. The 450 gigawatts of storage, of renewable energies which are announced, require a lot of balancing and flexibility. So we are in Europe quite ahead, I would say, in the penetration of renewables. Last year, wind energy alone wind energy powered 20% from whole European electricity generation, 20%. So it's a lot. 1/5 of all the electricity which was consumed in Europe came last year from wind only. This is quite some numbers which are challenging an existing centralized system. It's something which needs the flexibility, the smartness of the grids, the information flows which are going on.
Second follow-up is, you mentioned outside of batteries, there are technologies, and yes, there are. Is there any sort of a low-hanging fruit outside of batteries that you think is perhaps what we can draw on? Because everywhere else, all we do is battery. So is there another idea?
It's a normal evolution. If you have a system, you want to flexibilize the system, it's very often fast-reacting primary reserve in order to make sure that if you replace the rotating masses, that you still have a kind of synthetic inertia and that your system is still stable. And that's the first thing you want to do. So that's normal that you have fast-reacting lithium-ion batteries or other batteries which do this. But then, when you look at, again, at the aim of decarbonizing, in Europe we have now agreed that we want to have 40% of carbon reduction by 2030. 40% compared to 1990. We're discussing if we should get this aim, this goal, to 50 or 55%. So cutting basically more than half of what we had in 1990. And there you cannot only talk about electricity systems. There you talk about heating systems, about transport systems. And there you have no choice. So in a lot of parts of the globe, you see now you're at the beginning with electricity, but you will have to move quite early to the other sectors, transport and heating. And there, the low-hanging fruit, I would say, in Europe we have roughly 60% of the energy which is used for heating. heating and cooling purposes, which is quite a lot. And if you take this energy and you store the heat, and you can store it in aquifers in the underground without needing to build any specific reservoirs, and use it then in the cold moments, or use it as district cooling, you can also use the heat as district cooling, then you decarbonize the heating and cooling sector, which takes a lot of energy, which emits a lot of CO2. In a lot of statistics you see this. So this is one of the low-hanging fruit because it's cheaper to store energy in heat or cold form than to store it in electrochemical battery form. So this is one of the steps. It's a big sector you need to decarbonize. It's cheap to store in heat. And it's where you need to go if you want to achieve really deep cuts of 50% or more of CO2 reduction.
I know the two of you came a little late, but we were talking about energy storage. We have two regulators here, and we have one former senior civil service person. But I'm going to allow each one to rebut or to add to what you think you just said, and then we'll then go over the next one.
See, one thing, when we are saying renewables, one clarification, for Indian system, large hydro we don't include when we are reporting. No? So whereas we see across the world, they include the hydro energy also as a renewable energy, and that's how the share of renewable energy in the total energy consumption appears to be very high. Here, in case our reporting system is that we only report only from the wind, solar, and other renewable sources which is there. That's why our percentage reflection is very less. As regards to the options of storage in India, so we already have the hydro pump storage, hydro power stations are there, and there are certain power plants which are storage type also. So that we can, optimally can be utilized when for the peak management. Already we are using that. But one, issue is there even with the storage or hydro power plants also, particularly in the South India. The operation of hydro plants is not in the hands of the utility. The release of water depends on the irrigation requirement. So that means suppose at 5 o'clock, 5 to 8 o'clock, the peak time is there, you are, you don't have liberty to operate during that time. So that is one. So though the pump storage is, or the large storage dams are options, but here the application or usage, is limited to the release of the irrigation purpose. That is there. But still, we have, of course, for example, if you take individual one country, France or Germany, they may be having around 9,000, 10,000 megawatt of pump storage, which is, with that liberty we don't have here. Our pump storage is very limited. That's we have very less. And that too again, for example, as I said, in South India, we have around 2,000 megawatt. But you can't use it. When main dam storage power plant itself we are not able to use. So therefore, that flexibility is not there with the Indian system, though we have large storage also as well as the pump storage also. So the option only, finally it's limited to now what type of other options, alternatives are there, whether you should go for the battery one or the other options of hydrogen or whatever options that are technologies available world over. So, but first, in the morning session also we said, we have to assess what is the requirement of your storage support for a given system. Here, each individual utility is independently developing their own resources and managing that. It's not, for example, Southern Grid, for the purpose of operation, it is a regional grid. But the surpluses or the sharing will not be from one state to another state unless they have their own understanding Otherwise, they can't transfer it. So therefore, that is what is happening now. The systems are expanding, and the resources are not being used optimally. So that's why many states are saying we are having surplus, surplus, surplus. So the question of storage comes only when you are able to use the available resources optimally first, and then wherever the values are there, then you can think of installing the energy storage.
Through renewables and electric efficiency for reducing carbon emission reduction. So that is a good idea because in the sense that if you really look at the transport sector, in the transport sector where the cars are come with hybrid, where we're looking at electricity use and the fuel use, that is the petrol use, the price is very high. But because they are like saying that if you buy this, your carbon footprint is going to go down. And if you look at India, the hybrid cars which are being sold and all, you see the maximum number of the customers in that area are youngsters below the age of 35. They are just around, have got the job, they put in 5 years service and all. When they want to buy their first car, they don't mind paying a higher cost because of the carbon footprint issue. Now, if that type of a message has passed on to the people in transport sector, it's possible that we should be in a position to move towards the same sort of a thing. Those who are aware about the carbon reduction issue, that I want to reduce my carbon footprint, then will I go for this particular option? This is one area which can be looked into, because if this explanation or this awareness is created, then it can be done. For example, I'll put it like this way, from a very personal point of view. Because I was in the energy department and all that, so where I stay in Bangalore, the Batra was mentioning of reliability of power. Our power is so reliable that I have to keep on calling the BESCOM people that, there's no power in my house. So what happened is the frequency of my complaints started increasing, not only on a daily basis, but number of times during the day. What was the solution they provided? They came, sir, why are you doing all this? They came and put 2 inverters into my house, so that I will not know how many times it has tripped or how many times the power has gone, because it's going up. But the other side was my power bill went up, because it will keep on consuming power and all that one. I'm just mentioning the fact that as an individual customer whom I'm aware of all these things and all, I have an inverter system inside my house to take care of the lighting load, because at least the lights are around that one. And we run the automatic, the washing machine or the dishwasher, and the fridge is supposed to be on the continuous 24/7, but all the others are now run based upon how the inverter behaves. Because the others can't run on the inverter, you can't run a washing machine or inverter, no. So we wait for the daytime up and down. So I'm just saying that how the BESCOM, which is supply side, is trying to change my behavior. What we really require is, if you really look at the youngsters and all that who are there, what I see in Bangalore I'm talking about, that the customer is becoming aware if we are able to bring him and discuss with him and bring him to the table. Here we are not interested in bringing him to the table at all. We are all looking at these issues. I'm talking on distribution side. Obviously, the other issues which you have talked about is grid management. In terms of storage and other things which you're looking at grid management. Mr. Gopal has mentioned that whatever you talk about that, if there's no economic viability or a commercial viable, things will not work. They can be all niche areas and all that sort of a thing. This is what I gathered around about it. But what, as I see from a policy making level and all that one, if the pricing is not done properly, then it becomes difficult. I've seen times where Madhya Pradesh has paid up to 18 rupees per unit. But the policy makers, when they sit down and say, okay, why don't you make a provision for 18 rupees? They balk at the idea and say that, no, we'll go for bidding, price bidding, this bidding, and we'll look at 1 rupee person and all that one. I think that has to be changed. I would request that, it's a question is that whether it's the policy makers or people who are here and the regulators and all that one, there has to be some sort of an education there also, that, the pricing products which are available, they know it. I'm not saying they don't know it. But when you sit down on a table and all that one, then everybody refuses to look at. So that sort of problem comes up. Singh Saab had just mentioned the gas generation in the country. I do not know whether, I think Gopal, you should tell how much of the gas assets in the country are lying idle. So what do we do about it? So there has to be an initiative taken up and a leadership has to move forward. But in terms of policies making and all that you're talking to me, I think there is a time now. No, I think that point is this one, 10 years, 20 years back when we started off, we had asked the Ministry of Power and Government of India to focus on distribution and rural electrification. Rural electrification was not being funded by Government of India. It was left to the state government. We came up with a large program which the government has taken. But in this decade, I think the focus will have to be, it's not distribution alone, move down to the last mile guy, look at the customer who is a cash generator. If you take him into confidence, he should be able to give it. Otherwise, what happens is you don't raise any cash at all. Who are the cash generators on the hand? Now, if it is a process industry, it will look at differently. If it's a manufacturing industry, it will look at differently. Maybe some other industry will look at differently based upon how you're going to do it. But you need to now enter into dialogue with them. I think the focus will have to now push down below because the title given is that you are pushing us. Who does carbon footprint reduction? Until you and I agree to it, we won't do it. So how do we do it? If I'm consuming X amount of power, and this is the carbon footprint, and it was mentioned, I think, in the topic that how do you integrate transportation? For example, when you talked about hydropower being agriculture, interesting thought came to my mind. If you don't give the water to the agriculture, they're going to pump. See, if I give water directly to the agriculture, he will not use electricity. But if I don't give him power, the sun, he will use electricity to take the same power. So what is the combination which has to work well as we have a look at it? Now, for example, solar pumps. The solar pumps is a very interesting, this one, which is coming up through. Now, if the farmer has to be, for example, Gujarat gave a very different policy decision. The Gujarat policy decision was, we will separate the transmission lines for delivery lines to the agriculture set. Feeder, yeah, obviously the feeder. And then you take the villages which are looking for 24/7 power, changing. 8 hours of power, that's all. No, but I'll tell you, you should look at the impact which was done in Gujarat. The demand from the rural areas for white goods jumped by 400%. When simply one instruction was given that this line which goes to the agriculture will only have 4 hours of power, 6 or 8, whatever, that much power. After that, it will be switched. But to your village, you will get a 24/7. So when the village was given 24/7, it unwittingly gave a boost to the rural economy in that area. Now the question came up is, those people, what they've done, if we start asking them, look, you change your behavior to this, probably it can happen. So maybe it can happen that way. I think Sri Lanka and Indonesia are all we are all in the same basket, in the same group. But we'd like to listen to what he has to say. Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks a lot. But you'll have to create a whole division, push it forward, and who eat, drink, and breathe human beings.
I have comments for all you guys in the end, but just the story of Sri Lanka.
Okay, my name is Rohan Senaviratna. I come from Sri Lanka. I'm the additional general manager to Ceylon Electricity Board, which is the national.
It's interesting you still call it Ceylon.
Yeah, we still call our institution Ceylon, but for all the other aspects, we call Sri Lanka. But we have not changed our name from 1969 onwards. So I'm the additional general manager for the National Power Utility. And thank you for inviting me for this India Smart Utility 2020 by India Smart Grid Forum. I will try to stick to the theme given, the global perspective on energy transition and smart grids, and perhaps I will talk about Sri Lankan perspective on energy transition and smart grids. As far as Sri Lanka is concerned, perhaps it's a small island, and you cannot compare with India. India is 80 times as large as Sri Lanka. Our total maximum demand is approximately about 2,500 megawatts. And the total annual electrical energy consumption is about 15,000 gigawatt hours. If you really look at the country is 100% electrified. All the houses have been given electricity. And also we manage the total losses of the sector, that is generation, transmission, and the distribution at 9.8. So I think that's a very good level that we maintain, generation, transmission, distribution. In fact, I was heading a small distribution utility, SBU-like thing, and it was 300,000 customers. My losses were 4.75. I manage at the 4.75 losses. That is also, I think, quite good when you compare with the similar institutions in the region. When you look at the last year, 2019, how we generated our electrical energy, from renewables, 35% of the electrical energy came from renewables. Again, 34% came from coal power. And the balance, that's again another 32% from diesel and the furnace oil. So that was the mix of electrical energy generation in the country in the 2019. So when you talk about the renewable 35%, we have always been in that region. And some years we went to 50, some years we went to 55, some years were wet years. So this maintaining 35, it is including the major hydro as well as the mini hydro and the wind and the solar altogether. So in the recent past, we were discussing on this decarbonization of the sector because we generate about 30 to 35% from diesel and furnace oil. So we want to do away with that and to decarbonize the sector. So we have had a lot of discussions on how the electrical energy mix in 2030 should be to decarbonize the sector. So we have had a lot of discussions and a lot of engineering went into, a lot of software tools that we use, our generation planning engineers. And ultimately what we decided was in the year 2030 to have 70% of the electrical energy of the country to be produced from clean energy, not renewables. So when you talk about the clean energy, we assume that the gas, the liquid natural gas is clean, even though it is not that clean. But we assume that it is clean. So what we wanted to have 70% clean energy, that is basically 35% from renewables and 35% from LNG, so that we have about 70% clean energy. The balance 28% is from coal, and the 2% is from storage, pump, and the battery. So that is the envisaged energy mix, or rather electrical energy mix for the country for the year 2030. So that was approved by the government, and now we are working ahead to achieve that task, because that is also not an easy task. The first thing is we have to bring the gas to the country. We don't have natural gas. So we are now going to get liquid natural gas to the country. I was heading that particular project, and we are about to float for tenders to bring liquid natural gas to the country. Because liquid natural gas is very cheap. If you go to Asian market now, its MMBTU is $4. Sometimes in the Russian side, it comes down to 2.5 like that. So at that particular price, you can generate a kilowatt hour much less than the coal power price. So LNG. Yes, actually, now if you take the 4, for example, if you take the 4 MMBTU, you have to go through the FSRU, you have to go through the piping network. We have done all these things. FSRU cost will be about $180 per MMBTU, and the piping system is about 20 cents. So altogether, you have to add 2 more. We are not going to go for LNG terminal. We are going to go for a floating storage vessel, floating storage regasification unit. No, the production cost will be we can buy from the market around 4, and then we have to add 2. Yeah, add 2, then it will be 6. So 6 is a quite good price to generate electricity. Then you can generate lesser than the coal power price. So that is why we wanted to introduce liquid natural gas to the sector to decarbonize the sector. And on the other hand, at the same time, we are thinking of having more and more renewable energy integrated to the system. We have done a lot of studies on that. So we know how exactly we can add renewables to the system while maintaining the affordability and the reliability and the sustainability of the system. So in 2030, we have the exact plan, how much, according to 2030, we have to add another 1,000 megawatt of solar and about 650 megawatt of wind in addition to what we have. So we have all these plans to reach that 70% clean energy. To achieve that, we have to convert our systems to smart grid as well. So that we have done the roadmap. And some projects we have completed, some projects are ongoing. And we are talking about the demand side managers, so demand response schemes, and to have the forecasting technologies, then all various other technologies to have the stability, online stability runs, and so many things already happened. And so many things are going to come now for the ramping issues and things like that. We are thinking of having all future power plants on combined cycle, so the ramping is somewhat better. And also we are thinking of having the 600 megawatt storage, pump storage, plus the battery storage. So with that, the smart concepts also coming. So we are trying to achieve that target. For the distribution, for the first smart metering project we have launched, and now we are closing the tenders on 17th of this month. So that is only for 50,000 smart meters. That is the first commercial operation. So we have a roadmap again for going for 800,000 smart metering. And also the other aspects like the distribution SCADA, distribution control centers, and so many other things we are managing. And without a single smart meter in the system, we manage our losses at 9.8. And the smart metering will not give that much of great return to us, but it will add a lot of other benefits. That is why we are going for the smart metering. And also TOU tariff already issued, and also for all bulk supplies, it's mandatory to have the TOU. It's mandatory, they have to go for that. And also for the normal customers, ordinary customers also, we have introduced that tariff. Some people are.
So TOU is also for residential?
Also for residential as well. Residential tariff also already introduced. So that is also going on. So with all these new technologies we are going to embrace and all the other facilities and the renewable integration and the target set, perhaps we can achieve what we want to achieve in 2030.
I'll come to that. Okay?
Sorry?
Sorry? Before we all gang up around with this.
I forgot one thing about the roof solar. Roof solar we introduced in the year 2008. In fact, it was I who initiated the program. And it was slow moving for about 5-6 years, but due to the low cost of the panels and things like that, it boomed up. Now we have 230 megawatts of roof solar. That is 23,000 connections, and we have introduced 3 business models. That is net metering, net accounting, and the net plus. I don't hear many countries have all these 3 schemes, because net metering, of course, you bank it. Net accounting, you feed back to the system, we pay at US cents level. And the net plus is a complete generator. He doesn't use in his house or in his factory, completely generate from the roof and send back to the grid, and we pay at US cents level. So that 3 schemes are doing fine, and there's a tremendous demand for the roof solar. It's going at a rate, I think, now 230 megawatts. Perhaps we can reach some more in time to come. And also we maintain the grid codes. We have completed the grid codes on the LV side, and we give solar on the high tension side also, big ones. Even we completed the HT grid code also, improving the mini hydro grid code. And all documentation done, and then all testing and harmonic testing all trained and done. So we are doing a fantastic job in the roof solar as well.
So the reason I kept him last was so that A, we will not gang up on him. Second, there's a lot of lessons to be learned because he's an island, right? And so as an island, he's gone and pushed all this to the very limits for low, T&D losses countries, Mr. Shivanathan. We did a project. We did a study on it. That's how I came to understand what you do in Sri Lanka. Phenomenal lessons we learned, including hard node policies. Sometimes, Mr. Sinha has come here, so I've got 3 policy regulators. Sometimes you got to bite the bullet and take those. You can't be soft-nosed, and it just doesn't work that way. So the key question is, when he was the sole regulator, he did certain things, because he was the only man. He was able to take decisions, right? Now, thoda different. So that kind of decisions have got to come. The second lesson learned is, Mr. Jadhav is not here, but I think he hit it right on the head. And you brought it up as a part of colonization in your DR, right? All the three, and I'm going to leave the last question before we add these individuals on. If you were to take 2 steps as a recommendation, what would it be, to whom would it be, and what would it look like? DR, or demand response, close to, let's say, last mile, whether condoization or with solar, without solar, etc. And then the customer segment that he talked of, where customers have to be inside. So that it's a pull as opposed to a push. So I'm going to leave that open to any one of you, especially the regulators, or if Mr. Sen wants to jump in, that's great. Yeah, and that will be good. Because this discussion, Saab, has been going on and on and on every time I come to India. I mean, it looks like there's no closure on this. And everybody is right. Unfortunately, everybody is right. But yet, countries after countries who are sometimes as probably, frugal as India, have gone way ahead of India. Why is it? So that's the lesson to be learned from this man. Yeah.
Commission. And before that, I had a very long tenure in the power sector, starting with NTPC, then with Chairman DVC and other thing. Now, the issue is very typical for our country. We are really in a position where we don't have power at all. You go to the number of states, 24/7 power we speak about 100% household, electricity, everything we speak. But we have done number of studies, we have found even 4 to 5 hours powers are not available. This is the first thing we have to accept the reality. Though the grid, LT line, everything exists, but the power is not available. First. Second, even the services available is also very poor. Quality is very poor. All those things. Let us not look to the isolated pockets like Delhi or Kolkata or something, the cities and some other. The rest of the country is really in a very difficult position. So when you talk about all those futuristic things, it really doesn't start happening.
But why do you call it futuristic?
Because it is not happening in our country. We have to do it. Futuristic because we have to do it. Not because. It is not because still we are keeping in store. So now coming to because after going through all those things, I have made one more concept that is called integrated service provider. Right now you will see the government of India is talking about privatization of the distribution, all the licenses. Those who had losses having more than 15%. I think you have been hearing from all the media, and they are either privatization or franchisee, all like this, because they all have accepted that this model of government running the distribution network will not be successful, even whatever money you pump in. During last 5 to 10 years, we have pumped in less than 5 to 6 lakhs of crores, and now again the government has decided to pump 3 lakhs crores, out of which 1 lakh only they have allocated in this particular budget. Now, still they feel that 3 lakhs crore also may go into waste. Right now, the distribution companies' losses are more than 4.5 lakhs crore. Accumulated loss, I'm talking. Yearly loss is 8,000 crore. And all those things, I mean, if you see the numbers, it is, Uday, you thought that Uday will put a stop, at least some, I mean, your speed breaker. There is no speed breaker even. Forget about stoppage. So then we deliberated and discussed, and we come, because the moment we talk about privatization and franchisee, they are also very selective. They will only look for the places where things are very low hanging. What is the problem with the franchisee? Because our contracts are such that they have to invest. So number of franchises has failed because the capital investment, all those things really doesn't happen unless there is a payback which they see coming. So I have come out with a concept of integrated service provider. We will be discussing tomorrow in the World Bank. We have a meeting in the World Bank. Day after tomorrow, we will be taking out a TEDI in a one-room tour. I have invited Mr. P.P. Singh and some of the people who are close. And now, what we are talking about? We are talking about only connecting the microgrids, everything. Whatever you are talking about, this, your energy transition, everything will be addressed there also. Smart grids also will be addressed there, but in a different platform. Now, what it, if you go back to any of the distribution licenses which are government run, they have been given one major responsibility, the social responsibility. That too, I mean, charge tariff based on the social requirement, I mean, as decided by the government. Whereas they should be bailout from those people who have been, Mr. Ismail Khan, all those, you know, I have been very vocal across my FOR and all those things that there should be voltage-based tariff. There shouldn't be any, I mean, tariff based on your type of customer, all those things has to be totally abolished. And I have given the total number, everything. I have been notified the regulation also. Unfortunate, the regulation was notified. Some of my friends in the licensee, they jumped in the feet of the chief minister, and then she told, look, I mean, you have not enough discussion. I mean, we have enough discussion. But still, anyway, so what I was telling, the government should impose some duty, which already they are charging, about another 40 paise extra duty for the some of the commercial and other thing. And that money will be sufficient to do the all those, I mean, whatever the way they want to reimburse all those things can be done. We are talking about direct benefit transfer. It can be through direct benefit transfer. Also, it can be through your distribution licensee himself, separate account. So he doesn't have the threat of losing the high-value customer. And high-value customer also not look for open access or not even the most unprofessional way of putting captive generators. Highly, I mean, energy inefficient. People are putting even as high as a 4,000 hit rate, 4,500 hit rate. Whereas today, most of the efficient plants are running around say, 2,000, less than 2,000 also. 2,000, I mean, maybe somewhere you're talking about around 2,000. So it is more than double your coal we are burning, more than double auxiliary power we are consuming. All the same, it's all mess because there is a commercial benefit. So what I tell you, if you switch over to a voltage-based tariff, then they will see that the licensing power is cheaper than even whatever the base they do. And government should impose a duty on the consumption, not on the, so whoever is consuming, whether it is open access power or any power, you impose a duty on the commercial establishment who have to bear some amount of social responsibility. So like this, all those things we have given, they know it, I have been very vocal, I have made the regulation, all those things. Ultimately, it is not coming. Now, second thing, what I am saying, integrated service provider. Why? Because all the contractor we are engaging are in a fragmented way. Means one is doing the meter reading, other is doing the line maintenance, other is doing the transformer replacement. Like this, we have fragmented into 10 or 15 contractors, but 90 to 95% jobs are contracted out. So I was telling that time minister was Mr. Monish Gupta. Yeah, I think he was quite known in the sector at that time. So I told, look, sir, you are already doing everything to contract. Why don't you put them in one basket? And let it break into not in the job wise, but in the area wise. Give a small substation or a large substation, whatever, with a full responsibility. Starting from the energy, he will have to ensure the fulfillment of standard of performance. You know the regulation, we have a standard of performance, which we keep it very honestly, and we keep it just like a, what you call, some holy grail. It is kept, not for the use. So somehow, so we'll be really in a position to introduce the SOP. And he has to perform the SOP regulation so that the consumer really get, as we are telling the example of Gujarat, 24/7 power, quality power. And once you do all those things, you will be in a position to cut down the price, everything. And the cost of contract will go down. And the responsibility will go to the service provider. He will, I had engaged KEPCO, the Korean utility in West Bengal, for both the licensing and the West Bengal. And they came out with 2-3 very good suggestions, which are very typical. Here's the majority of your 5 to 6% losses are because of your unbalance in the phase, which can be done very easily, which most of the private distribution licenses are doing, but not the government. Second is, again, the loading of the transformer. Third is excessive LT line. So this is a very small, you don't require any skill set, you don't require anything. It is only dedication and commitment, that's all, nothing else. So we expect when you come out to ISP, you will be doing all those things. You will bring down to 4 to 5%. I'll send you my paper. If you have time, you can attend our roundtable and TEDI at 4 to 5 day after tomorrow. We'll be deliberating all this. We want more feedback. So we are talking about the microgrids getting, once the ISP come, he'll have to move to every part of the country, not restricting only in the very, very, the commercially viable areas. And Once he moves, he will be also the facilitator in all those interconnecting the microgrids, bringing the best technology, bring all those. We are keep divided into two groups, tier 1, tier 2 technology, all those things. So I will not take much of time. I think those things are very, very important, and it can be only done in our country if you take out all those things from our existing people who should be available for the management, not for the actual implementation on that.
We're going to close this round, but I want to ask you a question. Do you buy RV? You are a private sector. And then his finance minister is also going to give free power. So that announcement is coming from West Bengal. I haven't heard this. Oh, you are there. You should. But I believe it would be a check like the Delhi model, where you will get a check from the government for the free power that the sector. No coming up? Because I was in Calcutta day before yesterday, and it was resounding everywhere. Free power is done.
No, you are always free.
All the comments you have to get respond now.
We are very good friend also. So that's also.
Unless the regulators want to squeeze everybody, then they might even close the business down. This is what the government is trying to do with Vodafone and Airtel now. The idea is to sustain business, and if you have to sustain business, you have to look at it realistically, make it profitable, so that it works, it serves the cause of everyone. We talk about, I'm sorry to say that, we talk about cost to serve.
It's a cost of service regulation.
No, cost to serve. This is kind of about it. There was a policy of the government of India that cross subsidy will not be more than 20% by 2012. Do you know what is the cross subsidy level now? 100%. So we talk beautifully, but when it comes to implementation, we just don't know what to do. Second, I mean, again, I'm somewhat of a criticizer of this system. The government talks about solar irrigation pumps. Beautiful concept. I will fully agree if it looks only with respect to power. The unfortunate, I don't need a mic. The unfortunate.
He's recording.
रिकॉर्ड के लिए तो मेरा आधा तो रिकॉर्ड हो गया है अनफॉर्चुनेट प्रॉब्लम है our country is absolutely depleting its subsoil water. Nobody's ever thought of it. In Delhi, we said no agricultural concept because the subsoil water had depleted from 10 feet to 250 feet. There is no aquifer available.
All are dried out.
All has dried out. Now, we think in terms of policies in isolation. And that is one of the biggest struggles facing this country.
So in fact, if I was to conclude with this first round before we introduce our new guests on this round, increasing penetration of renewables today for a plethora of reasons, including energy storage we talked of, or demand response, everything. Are you going to achieve your targets?
Yes, we will. I'll tell you why. A lot of the power is going to be drawn within the consuming areas. Rajasthan and MP will be able to serve Maharashtra. Some of the west coast and east coast wind generators will certainly be able to serve South India. A lot of Rajasthan power will come to Delhi. Some of the mini hydro will flow down from Nepal, Bhutan, Sikkim and Uttarakhand into all these regions. So realistically speaking, we will be able to serve them. The problem in renewables now is, with the outbreak of coronavirus, there is not going to be any supply of solar cells, and we are only dependent on China. We are only dependent on China. Unfortunately, Spain, France, America has all shifted its production facilities to China.
They will fail.
Yeah, I know. Whatever the reason, I'm not getting into that, but the fact is, we are solely dependent on China. 90% of our panels are coming from China, and we do not have a competing source, we do not have an equivalent source available, and there is no research and development activity in this country.
But it is
Don't
renewable
make the same
target for
oil
you.
batteries.
Yeah.
In energy-wise,
Don't make the same
independent,
oil
but the target.
I know.
That's a separate, in fact, in the previous session we
I
had
know that.
but,
It's 20%
okay, let me,
I know,
Let me close
battery
this
raise
session.
this issue.
Go to the
Don't
next
make the same error with batteries. We are making the same error with batteries. You know, lithium is only in South America. We do not have adequate lithium sources. So number one is, how do we secure lithium? That's the first part of it. And unless you have some very long strategic tie-ups or nice. The second part is, what do we do to create lithium recharge? That means spent batteries you reclaim and nothing is being done about it. Everybody's stocks very big. These are the predictions, this will happen, this will happen.
Can I give you one last lesson learned?
yeah, leave them to the practical part and I'll give that.
What were practical lessons? You mentioned net metering schemes in Sri Lanka. We mentioned before that there's microgrids on there which are working very well. But if the microgrids draw 5% or 10% of the national grid from time to time, and if this net metering is basically the grid which is storing your energy for yourself, not you, then the cost is put on the grid and not on the consumer. You need to keep in mind that the one who's making the cost should pay for the cost.
Obviously.
And therefore, if you don't want to subsidize with tax money the grid all the time, for the regulators, you need to make sure that the one who's putting the stress on the system and it's using the system, even if it's 1 hour, pays adequately. So it's not
Cost of reliability.
to modify that, because you're talking about kind of monopolistic distribution view, where actually we are needing more services from distribution network. And so that microgrid could provide as a service to the grid. If it's absorbed, so that should be compensated for that. So it is not.
That's all fine.
So that
But
kind
you
of
should not say, I pay the grid electricity I take only per kilowatt hour, because I take it only for, I don't know, 5 days a year. No.
No.
This is not fair.
Just for your reference, one thing for India. In Pune, there was a cost. Pune is a town just 200 kilometers, 150 kilometers away from Mumbai. There was a concept earlier of a reliability charge, which meant that if you wanted 24 hours of power, irrespective of where the distribution company got the power, you paid that reliability charge. And that used to be 30-40 paise at one point of time. I do not know what it is, but that is exactly the point that you have raised and which I have raised, that at the end of the day, the consumer wants something. He should be prepared to pay for it.
Let me set the context.
Moving to the other questions.
He needs to be clarified on how this thing happened in India. In India, these microgrids were created because the grid had not reached there.
Yes.
So one second. So they were off-grid microgrids, but later the grid reached there and therefore got connected.
Yes.
So there's a thing. People who made their own investment were private people who went and set up the grid. Now their investment cannot get stranded because they took the initiative. That's why this cost was put on the main grid. That's the reason. It's not for any other reason. Okay. So it's a different sort of thing. It's not that it was grid connected microgrid right from the beginning. It wasn't.
Okay. Thank you very much. Very interesting.
But we contact you on the flow battery
I will
thing. We'll do that.
Thank you very much.
So let's introduce the two other guests of our
I'm a son of Simon.
Director of System Operations in Kosovo.
Oh, okay. So Mr. Baba. Okay.
Right. So I didn't know the panels were merged.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
And yourself, sir?
Martin.
Martin.
From Nokia.
Oh,
We know each other.
right, right.
And now I'm with Nokia, no longer with Accenture. We met when I was with Accenture.
The first one was all about renewables and what can you do. It appeared, maybe a little, maybe too frank. It appeared that India still doesn't know where it's going, whereas Sri Lanka is all over. Okay? And I won't get to Indonesia yet. I'll give chairman the benefit of cover. Because he also may not have a great story. But being an island, in fact, we would like you to come and present, or we should host a meeting in Sri Lanka and learn the ABC steps as to how you achieve what you achieve. So that there are many islands, in fact, under this Global Smart Grid Forum, who can actually benefit, including this country. Right? So either you come there or we will ask you to host you. On the India side, I think there are still the questions we began with are still there. They haven't been solved. It doesn't appear that there will be a solution. But I still believe in the three focus areas. One is the customer pull, your community oriented aspect of it, integrating, maybe on a cargo basis. Response for, for large scale events. Other than that, no offense to the regulators, even though you have done great work in your thing, you have to come down hard, otherwise nothing will move. You can't, move. Because you're trying to be too charitable, nothing moves. So, good thing is you said you will still achieve your RE targets, which I like it. Even though Mr. Khan says somewhere there is an inter-regional thing. But you are saying you're achieving. Okay. I'm going to move to the second one.
160 we will achieve.
Okay, it doesn't matter, let's not
160, 170.
Otherwise this argument will keep on.
Target now 450.
450.
That is what he has given in Paris.
Right. He is talking of the 175, of which 160 will be achieved. Okay, good, which is good. Because I thought that even that will be a challenge, but you are saying subject to solar panels will be achieved.
My understanding is that it is not achieved.
Right, that's what. So we are not committed the date. You see, Rahul is also here, and he will join with him.
No, but the point is, if you don't get the panels,
No, subject to panels. But Rahul, you came late, so it appears that the Indian story is still soft story. There is not really any congruence to see a roadmap ahead. Okay, so that is one. Second, I am now going to jump to the second question on time of use rates. Right? I want to start with the regulators first. Why don't you, what do you think about time of use rates for residential? And is there exceptions that you think is not applicable to India? Because he's got time of use rates. Full. Right? Many parts of, you may say wealthy countries, but we all have time of use rates in Canada. But the debate on time of use